Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee, the author, the owner of BlackCatBooks.org, the author of I, the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful Rabbit Hole, Lore and Frey, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. So, I had a little bit of a discussion on Discord the other day about the current state of Splatoon, and I think it was something worth making a video over because I was kind of surprised at myself of how negative I'm kind of seeing the franchise right now. Because this is a series that I've always enjoyed, that I've always had fun with, that I've always thought was great, that was fantastic, even like the best online shooter on the market. Splatoon 3 made its way onto like my top 10 games of last year list, but weirdly enough, like going into 2023, like seeing the game and what they're doing with it, seeing the situation, having more of an experience with it, like I'm really beginning to wonder if Nintendo's handling of this franchise isn't eventually going to blow up in its face, because I don't think, I personally, most people really see the value of like playing Splatoon, right? This is an IP that's like really really fun. It's very very inventive. It has a lot of things going on. It's very well balanced. Like from a technical standpoint, the game is just fantastic in like all three of its modes, right? You have like turf war, the standard. You have the horde mode, the salmon run, and then you have like the single player campaign. Like all of that is great. I've always maintained the single player campaign in particular is a very underrated, very overlooked aspect of Splatoon, which really showcases like the creativity of the level design, the world, the IP in general. But like we're 3 games in, okay? Like where is the IP right now? Like, what has changed in the grand scheme of things when it comes to like the world building, the the features, the the mechanics, like the characters? Like, it feels like weirdly enough, the most interesting thing that's happened going from Splatoon 2 to Splatoon 3 is like the new idols and some of the weird timed events. The King Salmonid is a good example. The flooded turf war maps. Like it just feels like everything the game tries to do to keep people playing in regard for a long period of time. When it comes to when it comes to like Splatfests, when it comes to like the scoring system, when it comes to like the map rotation, it just feels all like very pointless and shallow, honestly. Like when I play Splatoon, every single time, what happens is that I pop the game in, I pick the build that I want to use, and then I just play like a couple of rounds of Turf War. I play maybe some rounds of the Horde mode. I don't play the single player campaign because I clear that day one, and like then I shut the game off and play something else. Like I have an absolute ball with it. I have a lot of fun with Splatoon 3. It is a fantastic video game. It is a very fantastic video game. But like Nintendo seems to really think that there's some major draw to like say releasing weapons like every now and then, to like releasing new King Salmonids or something, or releasing like minor adjustments to a game. Like it almost feels like the ideal time to pick up a new Splatoon game is the time period of time where like everything is available, when they've stopped updating the game. Like I now that Splatoon 3 is out, like my recommendation to people is to like go back and play Splatoon 2, because that game has a lot of things going for it that I think a lot of people don't really appreciate. You have like the really stellar Octopath campaign. You have like a still vibrant and alive online mode. You have like all this stuff. 3 is a great game, but in this sense, like how exactly has Nintendo grown and evolved the formula in 3 games? Like when you compare it to Super Mario Bros, like you have stuff like Super Mario Bros. 2 and 3, which are all like wildly different. They all did wildly different things. They all like improved in wildly different frames. Now Splatoon 3 is not literally the same game as Splatoon 1 or 2 at all, but in that sense, like, where is the that feeling that we're building up to something? Like, what exactly have they introduced in the past decade that's like different than what they showed back in E3 2014, right? Like, what exactly have they done for the next big to make Splatoon like more a more fleshed out, interesting IP? Like this is something that really should have gotten side games. This is something that this is something I could see having like an RTS spin-off, a rhythm game spin-off, a more dedicated single player campaign, maybe all these things that they could do, but for whatever reason, they don't really seem committed to doing any of it. Like honestly, I find myself wondering, like considering how few people are talking about the expansion for Splatoon 3, how many people realistically are going to go ahead and buy the DLC for a single player campaign of a game that like no one plays the single player campaign in? It's been kind of a thing for me, is that like I really do feel as if I'm the only person in the world who plays, enjoys, and talks about the campaign modes in Splatoon. It is one of the most underrated things about the IP, I think. It's just how good these single player modes actually are. I've gone on record saying Octopath expansion uh, is probably the best single player third person shooter campaign we've gotten ever, like in any video game. It really is just that good. It's so creative and does so much. Like when I look at Splatoon 3, it's like, why exactly when I buy a new video game do I have to wait 2 years to get something new and interesting? You know, like Splatoon 2 went through the same process where like it wasn't until the Octopath expansion where like it really felt that they did something like really innovative and really unexpected. Like this is something they really should be doing with the sequel to begin with. Why do I have to wait for a DLC campaign? It just feels so it just feels in a lot of sense that like they're not growing the IP the way they should. You know, like I think in theory, you know, the RTS idea or the rhythm game aspect idea, they could just simply just be incorporated into like the standard Splatoon game, right? Like you don't have to change turf war, you don't have to change anything about it, you don't have to like do those things, but you really need to start adding new concepts and ideas that really makes the series feel fresh, because I do think we are on the cusp of Splatoon becoming the Call of Duty of Nintendo, like stale, derivative, uninspired, just not really doing anything new or interesting. You know, when I compare it to Animal Crossing, which had like, you know, a big period of growth in between like City Folk, New Leaf, New Horizons. Like I remember when City Folk came out, and a lot of people were deriding it for just being like a the same thing as Wild World, which I've never actually played. But you know, looking back on that, Nintendo did take that feedback to heart. They really did take like making New Leaf and New Horizons like very seriously and really making something wildly different and really inspired. Like Splatoon has not gotten anything like that. You know, like this series is really popular. It's really beloved. It's doing very well for a very good reason, but I think there's a very clear reason why people can't get invested in it, because Nintendo doesn't seem to like want to decide whether they want to appeal to like older fans like me who have been there since the beginning, or older ones. Like how many people do you know who were excited about the fact that like you could go to Inkopolis from Splatoon 1 in Splatoon 3's like hub world with like the DLC expansion? Like who cares? You know, like what does that add to the game at all? Like I don't who in the world is that invested in in Inkopolis as a setting? You know, like it's not all that interesting. It's not all that fun. Like honestly, maybe the hub world should just be a menu, and then you go to like you explore the world in a single player campaign, which is more fleshed out and interesting instead of like the Super Mario Galaxy single player campaign we've gotten. Like we have never gotten a Splatoon setting that's interesting, right? Like a hub world that's interesting. Excuse me. Like we just it feels as if like in a lot of ways the IP, this is what Miyamoto was warning against. This is why Miyamoto is so fixated on like always doing something new with his properties, because if you don't innovate, if you don't do anything new, if you don't shake things up a lot, you end up with stuff like Splatoon. You end up with things that just feel as if there's no real change from what the series was 10 years ago, and we are reaching that point, I think. Um, and it's really weird for me to say this because again, Splatoon 3 is a great game, but so were Splatoon 1 and 2. What does Splatoon 3 do differently that really makes it stand out from those games? Like even now, I kind of find myself thinking that like, why exactly would I go back to Splatoon 1 or Splatoon 2? Like, other than the single player campaigns? Like, it just feels like, really, if Nintendo wants to do this thing where they just constantly just update Splatoon, like, just release a game a generation and then just, make it like a regular thing of just releasing new content for that one game. Like they can't seem to commit to the idea of releasing a game and like constantly updating it. Like they seem to be fixated on this idea that they have to release sequels, even though it's not really necessary. Like I think maybe they would have been better off just releasing Splatoon Deluxe for Switch, or making not putting out Splatoon 2 immediately on Switch, and then like just waiting a bit, coming up with some new interesting ideas. Like it just feels like what exactly what exactly do we have to look forward to the future of the franchise? Is like Splatoon 4 going to be the same thing over again? Is Splatoon 5 like they're just really going to keep going down the Call of Duty route? Like I don't see that going very well at all. Like the series I think really needs a fresh start. I do think we really do need to like consider just what exactly Nintendo can do to take this IP and really add new bells and whistles to it. They really need to think about that. They really need to find a use for cash. They really need to like improve like the leveling up system. Like they need to improve like the gear system. They need to like do all this stuff. I don't like cycling through menus like trying to find gear that isn't trash. Like I don't like you know playing all these turf war matches and then like not really getting anywhere with my rank, even though like I'm doing fairly well for myself and winning quite a few matches. Like I'm sick of being like of just feeling like the only reason to play Splatoon is to like raise your rank. Like and it feels kind of empty. It feels kind of hollow. It just feels kind of pointless. Like the only reason I play the game is to have fun. And like um it just feels like there's no real purpose to it. It just feels like in a lot of ways I'm wasting my time and I can do something else with like, playing another game. Again, that's a way I feel when like I'm not really invested in a video game IP, and that's not really what I want to feel going into a new video game. Like and Splatoon 3 was great when it came to the single player campaign. I would say the single player campaign is probably the most fresh, original idea they've brought to the table in this one. The final boss is super underrated in that game, by the way. But, the Horde mode is added a couple of new features with like the King Salmonid and stuff like that, but that's not nearly as interesting as I thought it would be when it was hinted at in Splatoon 2. Like, it just feels like they're trying to make a live service game by like masquerading it as like sequels. Like it feels like minor updates to a pre-existing game that's just been spread out over like a long period of time. It doesn't feel like a real successor in a lot of ways, and I don't really like that. Honestly, in my opinion, what they should do going forward, tie Splatoon to Nintendo Switch Online purchases. Like have people like pay a monthly a yearly subscription fee for Nintendo Switch Online, and then they just get like Splatoon. Like Splatoon just becomes a part of the service, and then they can like that could just be their premier thing for that sphere. I think. I think that might actually work for them. I've had similar ideas with like a lot of their other multiplayer games, because a lot of their games have like this weird problem of just not being able to maintain their player base. Like Triforce Heroes has a similar problem. Federation Force has had a similar problem. Like the games are great, they're fantastic given, but like once you like go through the motions and like unlock everything, like what exactly are you coming back for the online play for? These games want you to think that like they're going to be played and enjoyed for like 2 years straight. They seem to be designed that way, that you'll be tuning into every Splatfest, every big run, every map rotation, when that's not really the case. Like I don't revolve my life around Splatoon. Like I play maybe 5 hours a weekend a couple of times out of the year, and that adds up. That adds up to like quite a bit. I believe I have like something like 70 hours in Splatoon 2. Like I put a ton of time into these games over the years, but like there's still this feeling that like, yeah, like where is that feeling that we're getting something new? Where's that feeling that we're seeing something interesting? Like as of this point, like I feel like I only ever really get that in the single player campaigns. Like I feel like the core game, the online component, really should be doing a lot more when it comes to like its features, its modes, the things it offers. Like I just don't think three-way Splatfest really cut it all that well. I don't think we've had a single good Splatfest so far in Splatoon 3. I don't even pay attention to the Splatfest anymore because I never play them anyway. Because who cares really? Like who wins or loses. Like the bells and whistles aren't interesting. Like the change in location. Like I don't care for the music. Like I find myself skipping the banter between like the idols in this one because I really don't care what they think. And I like Off the Hook. I like the new idols, right? I like Shiver and Fry, right? And Big Man, right? Like Deep Cut. I'm sorry. Like I'm getting my band names confused. Like I like Deep Cut. I like what they bring to the table. I like the characters. I like what they I like their gimmicks and stuff like that. But how often do you see that play out like outside the single player campaign? Like I do think we're kind of at that point where we do need to like seriously start like questioning what Nintendo's plans for with this franchise are because I just don't think the direction at the moment is really what I personally wanted to see from this. Like I think, we've gone like a decade without a new Mario Kart, Like they decided out of the nowhere that we're just gonna release new Mario Kart tracks because we know that like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still selling, it's still popular, people still love it, but people, are getting tired of it. So let's go ahead and just update the game to keep the old players happy and to like, keep selling this game to new players. Like I think that's kind of what Splatoon 3, like Splatoon needs to acknowledge is that we do not need a new Splatoon game every 5 years. Make it a decade release, make it like a big event, make it like tack on all these crazy features and ideas, like make it like a big phenomenon, a big thing, right? And sell that game for a decade until the next one comes out. Like I don't think I don't think there was any really purpose in releasing so many Splatoon games in so short of a time. Like I know Splatoon 1 released in kind of a weird period on a weird console, but like I think they really should have had this ironed out by Splatoon 2. Like I do think they really should have figured out like how they wanted to evolve the story, how they wanted to evolve like the characters and like the world and just what they wanted to do with like the IP going forward. That they have to have some understanding that there's a problem here. That there has to be some kind of like recognition that there is going to be a point where people are just going to get tired of the stereotypical Splatoon gameplay, and they have to innovate and try something new.